If you're a non-developer and you've been curious about this new phrase, vibe coding, or if you're just curious about what it's like to build something without coding, then this will be a good demo for you. What I'm trying to do here really is, most importantly, is just to dispel this idea since the phrase vibe coding was first introduced by the OpenAI folks in February in 2025. Because they've included the word coding in it, it sort of gives you the impression that you need to code to be vibe coding. But actually, the reverse can also be true. That is true in some cases, but the reverse can also be true. And I think for non-developers, the most exciting part is getting stuff done that you would have had to have coded for before, that you do still need some code to do, but without actually looking at the code at all. So this is very much oriented towards people who are not using vibe coding for teaching them to code. And I guess in that, I will make a fairly important distinction here. So there's a lot of hype around at the moment around building apps. So persistent app, a thing that keeps running. You may use it yourself. Small group of people might use it. In the olden days, you'd have to use low-code tools like Power Platform for that. And there's a lot of hype around at the moment that you can do this stuff with vibe coding. Not my experience, and it's really not what I'm covering today. What I'm saying is that there are a whole bunch of one-off tasks where the code is written for you by some AI. You QA the inputs and outputs of that code, but you don't actually need to look at the code at all. And this is best for one-off tasks like you want to get data from point A to point B, which is in the demo that I'm about to give, a real situation that I have. I've sanitized it to keep details safe and keep privacy in mind, but this task roughly is a task that I needed to get done for myself, and I used vibe coding to get it done. All I am going to be doing throughout that process is checking the inputs and the outputs, whereas if you're getting AI to help you build an app, you're going to be having to QA the code, and ultimately, if you're not a developer, then at some point you're going to be pushing the limits of what can happen today. I'm pretty excited to see what happens for tomorrow. So the types of people who are going to find this most interesting are people who have been on the fringes of technology for a long time, like testers, business analysts, project managers, maybe. Any sort of power user that's been using low-code platforms, who's good at spreadsheets and macros, is going to find this really, really super useful because it'll just increase your productivity. It'll lower the bar on tasks that you would have had to have asked developers to do in the past. So let's look at what we're going to be achieving today. I'm going to try and do this in one take. That will mean that it's probably longer than it needs to be, but I think this is important to understand how to get out of some of the cul-de-sacs as it is to actually get the job done. And I wanted to pick something real. And real things tend not to be just one step, but they tend to be multi-step. So this is what we're going to build today without coding. I'm going to say that once more. So I have an existing CRM system. I'll call that a legacy CRM system. That could represent pretty much any system that you have access to the database for in today's world. In that system, I have a bunch of things which are basically people's profile names. But as you will have seen yourself, a lot of those profile names can be pretty ambiguous in which are the private names, personal names, which ones are titles, which ones are qualifications, and so on. And what I need to do is ultimately I want to put that into a Salesforce environment that I have access to, which we're going to achieve in this session. But in so doing, I've got to try and split out a personal name from all the other names because I don't want it in my CRM as a sort of mess. I want it in my CRM as neatly as I can. And the simplest way to get that done is actually to use OpenAI programmatically, so not sort of interacting with ChatGPT, for example, or Copilot, but actually getting the code that is being written for us to talk to that service so that it can be used to split out personal names from family names and so on. So this is what we're going to get done. I'm going to use a thing called Cursor. It's the only thing that I think is practical at the moment in terms of doing vibe coding. I want to get into the reasons for that, but hit me up in the comments if you're keen to get started. I can send you some stuff that will set you up with exactly what I've got here. Now you'll notice with the cursor I've got the Pro version. I believe everything I'm doing today is possible with the free version. You just hit a wall at some point where it either slows down or if it's taken you maybe twice as long to get through it, you may find that you hit certain limits, you have to slow down a bit, come back in a day. So I'm going to start from scratch. So new project, put it in here. We're going to create a new folder. And normally in this thing, you've got your files over on the left, you've got some sort of AI chat going on the right, and you've got the code in the middle. Just to demonstrate my point, I'm going to get rid of the code window in the middle. We're just going to be interacting with the AI only. And I'll make the point that this is agentic AI as opposed to just default modes. And what that means is that it's going to not just suggest code to me that I then accept and put into my own files. It's actually going to suggest code, which I'm not going to look at, except maybe just to demonstrate to you what it looks like. But it'll also run that code, and it will also try and fix its own errors. So all I'm going to be doing is trying to direct it to do the things that I want it to do and make it make sense to me. And you'll notice on the way through, I'll give you some tips on how to structure this so that it's doing what you want rather than you being confused by what it's doing. So I'm just going to start by saying I've got some data in a database. I'll call it a Neon database. I want to grab hold of it. What I can use. Where do I start? What do I need to give you? So not really assuming a huge amount. It's giving me some responses here. What it's saying is you'll have this sort of thing here. It's calling a connection string. I don't really need to know what that means. All I need to figure out is, okay, well, how do I give that to you? So I'm going to say, where do I find that? I'm pasting connection string in there. And it says, go to your console, go to your project, look at the dashboard. You'll see some connection details. Fantastic. Let's see if we can get that done. So this is my database. This is just a web-based console where I'm looking at my database. Looks very technical. The important thing here is that we've got some dummy companies, got some dummy opportunities, and we have some dummy connections in here as well. You notice that I've sanitized all this stuff, which I've done with the names as well. So nothing meaningful in there, but it's in the rough structure that you'd expect a CRM system to do. So even without knowing any of the stuff here, what I'm trying to do is give the AI access. So it's telling me that I need to go to the console, got my project, go to the dashboard, right? So I've got a dashboard here on the left, and it's saying that I need to be looking for connection details. Now, I'll make that bit bigger so you can see it. First time I did this, I actually didn't notice the connect button. So what I did is, and this is tip number one, probably the most common tip to use is learn how to take a screenshot into your clipboard on a Mac. That's Shift Command 4. And as you choose the area, you hold down the Control key. I'm not sure what it is on Windows, but I'm sure you'll find out. In fact, just ask the AI, which I won't do now just because I'm trying to keep this reasonably short. So I've copied that and I've kind of pasted it in here. It's pasted an image. It's just the copy that we did. And I've said, I don't see connection details. Has a look at the image. Right, I can see that. What you need to do is click on the connect button, which once it told me that the first time, felt like a bit of a Gumby, because there it is right there. But it illustrates the point though, because sometimes things aren't obvious, and sometimes these things have been trained on data that's just a little bit older than the current things look. which obviously was the case here. And this is the thing it showed me earlier on. I'm just going to say copy that thing there. Let's say great. Here it is. Can you take a squiz and let me know what's in there? I need to grab profile names and figure out next steps. Now, tip number 2, if for all files, let's prefix with 01 for this. I want to keep a history of the bits we do. I find this handy when I'm in this particular mode, when I'm doing one-off things, because sometimes you want to go back to a previous step, and if it's overriding the same code the whole time, or if it's producing 10 files, sometimes it's just a bit hard to keep track of. So I'm just going to ask it to do that. It'll almost certainly fail to do that at some point, and then I'll just ask it to fix it up. So what I've given it the connection to my database, and now what I'm asking it to do here is just to have a look at, tell me what it sees. Very handy. It's being very helpful in telling me that it's going to write some code. And it's writing some code. I can look at that code, but I'm not going to do that just yet. Don't want to confuse you. The point is that I don't really need to look at the code. It's telling me that it's creating a .env file to store the connection. That's fantastic. Thanks for that. Let's create a requirements file. That sounds great. I don't even know what it's doing because it's using a thing called Python. Sorry, a little pop-up came up there. I just got rid of it because it didn't make any sense to me. I don't use Python when I'm coding, but it's telling me that I need a requirements file. So great, it's done that for me up here. It's got a little env file. It's writing me some code. Now let's do that and let's do some things. Now let's run the script. And sometimes it'll do all of that stuff and it'll actually not run the script for you, in which case you can just say, please run that for me. Half the time I do demos, it runs it for me. Half the time I have to ask it, but don't be afraid to ask it to run stuff for you. So it's just run something here. I could show you all of, in fact, I can probably scroll through that. Is that possible? Yeah. You can see in here, it's done a bunch of stuff. The program it's written has output a bunch of stuff. Again, I'm not really interested in that. I'm just asking it questions. So it's, without me prompting, said, oh, look, what I've seen in here is I've got companies, I've got connections, and I've got opportunities. Connections is the one I want. For the profile names you mentioned, they're in the connections table, so it's figured that out for itself. Give me some examples. That's fantastic. So it's saying what I want to do. Now, back to my earlier point, tip number 3 is have a think about what you're trying to do before you do it. Oops, let's do this. Don't give this whole task to AI. You will fail miserably. The trick is to break it down to logical steps that make sense to you. Break those into the smallest bits that you can actually test the inputs and outputs of. So far, we're connected to a database and we've got some information. Now, I would actually break out the next step as number 2, which is now that I can see all the information over here, what I want to do is actually grab it. So I'm just going to ask it to grab it. So I'm going to say in O2, let's grab everything in, what did it say? Opportunities, no connections. We'll use that in our subsequent steps. Again, running some code. I'm a little bit upset that the code's running so easily. Normally by now it would have seen an error. and it would have been trying to correct its own errors. I'm sure that'll happen at some point. So it's written some code, it's output some stuff. What have we got here? We've got connections.csv. So it's chosen to download all of that stuff into a CSV file format, which is most people will be familiar with if they've used Microsoft Excel before. Sometimes it'll download it in different formats. I don't mind. You could have a look at that. That's great. For the moment, I won't bother. Okay, next, I want to test, say, 10 of these to see if OpenAI can pull out the first names from the rest. Actually, and surname family. What else we call that? Last name. So again, I'm going to break that into one step. I'm going to say, look, let's test we can connect to OpenAI before we actually test the, what do we call that, conversion split thingy. What do you need from me for that? Cool. So it's off. I'm going to test some stuff for me. Now, what I'm going to do here is just, I've demonstrated once that it can help you figure out where all the keys and stuff are. For this one, what I'm going to do is actually give it those. So again, if you had a bit more time today, I would go through the process of getting it to help me figure out what I need from Salesforce and also what I need from OpenAI. But for this one, I'm just going to give it the answer so that we can speed that up a little bit. I got those originally by asking it exactly the same questions as I did before with the Neon database. So the other point here is you can actually interrupt it. Let's add the remaining details here for our next steps. So I've just given it those bits. Let's add the remaining details for our next steps. And update the code to use those. So this is a good example where it's actually hit an error. So you may or may not have noticed that it ran this and it's got an error here. And it's saying that I've got an error with the API. Fantastic. Great. We should, the error message is actually telling the AI what it should be doing. It's having a third attempt, I think, now. And it's actually changed its strategy to use an older version of this OpenAI package. I've actually hit this before. I'm not sure what's going on with the new version, but apparently it's not that stable. Excuse me, slurping my coffee. Just adds to the realism. Let's have a look. So it's telling us that our API key is in the wrong format. So what I might do is, okay, help me find my key. Where do I look in OpenAI? I've obviously done something wrong with my little shortcut. So we're going to have to go the long way around. It's probably going to tell me where to go, actually. Let's see. There we go. Going to go there. We're going to click on the account, view API keys. Click on your account icon, top right-hand corner. View API keys. It's not giving me that on the screen, so I'll go there. Lovely. This is the previous key that I created. I'm just going to delete that so that we can start again. Issued series existing, always starts with SK. Check if you have an existing key, create new secret key. Let's do that. Another demo. And it's giving me this thing that starts with SK in the format that it wants. How's this? There we go. Muddling through. The point being that when you hit blocks, all you've got to do is bring it back to your language, get it to explain to you where you're struggling, take a screenshot, and eventually you'll probably get there. If I can, you can. Okay, so that's tested the connection. So now let's go to step 4. I think it's actually suggesting this here. Connection, names connection data, so I would create a new script 04 that will, yeah, let's do exactly that. Yes, do that and pick out 10 of the more curly ones for testing. I know there's one that I saw in there that it'll be interesting to see if it picks it. Connections. Yeah, that was one of the names that I looked at that I was trying to figure out which one was the family name versus given name versus personal name. Let's see if it picks that one. Lovely. So let's give them some examples here, the 5 examples. We can look at that little result if we want to, but actually I'm more interested in what it says about the results itself. So we've actually now successfully called an OpenAI API, which until a couple of days ago I'd never done. Would take me days to figure out how to do that, and I'm an ex-developer, so yeah, that's pretty cool. So we've got something like a Craig Stewart, grad cert, CybSec. So in this example, you can see if you'd just taken the first and second names, you might have been lucky. But in this example, that would not have worked, right? So Doogie is obviously a nickname, and it's picked out Wei as being the surname. Duan Li Wei. Parsing looks accurate for these test cases. We'd like to. Is that right with Li Wei? I'm not fully up to speed with all cultural variations on surname, family name. Sorry, the reason I'm asking that question is that I wondered whether that was correct or not. Li Wei, I suspect it is, but you know. Perfect. Both Li and Wei could be part of the surname. So now it's modifying the script to handle that better. It's doing a lot of stuff for me. I love this. Cool. And you can go through this process, more. We could expand it, but for the moment, I'll just accept that. And I'll say, it seemed a bit slow actually. It looked like it was doing those individually. Can we update to do it faster, like in batch? I need to do my whole database. If not, no problem. I'll grab another coffee. There you go. Now, again, I'm not looking at that as a technical thing. I just noticed, not sure if you guys noticed as it was going through, that it seemed like it was doing that quite slowly. So I'm just asking a question that I often ask it when I'm going through this process. So I guess this is a tip. Is sometimes when you're calling other services, you want to consider whether it can be all done at once, and quite often there's like a batch option. Sometimes there's not. So sometimes the answer will be no. And hey presto, it's doing all of those. So what I might do, let's see if we can open this. That's interesting. It's saying pausing for rate limit. So it's obviously picked up that there's some sort of limits to how many of these things you can do in a particular amount of time. So it's deliberately paused in the code, which I didn't realize it had to do. The results are in here in the CSV file. So I'm going to have a look at the CSV file because I want to see if these things look realistic. I might see if there's a way of maybe I'll look at that in. See if I can bring that up in my Google Docs. As you would in Excel. I just don't have Excel. So parsing results. Let's do that. That's an interesting format. Don't think I understand any of that. Oh, I see. Parse result. Right, I see what it's doing here. I don't really like that. Well, I don't know. Maybe it can use that. Give a name Peter, family name, Jackson notes, Western name order. Yeah, I don't see why that's a problem. As long as it can use that, it's great. But it seems to be accurately picking out people's names here, so that's great. Right, back to our task. So, how far have we got so far? We've managed to grab the names, we've loaded them down, we've got a file that's got all that stuff in it. We've managed to successfully call this service to split out the first names and last names. Now all that remains is to get into Salesforce. And this time, let's have a look. Excuse my finger troubles. And I'm just using this for reference because this is where I wrote down my stuff last time. This is where all my Salesforce username passwords are. You're welcome to take this, by the way. It's a demo org for Salesforce. I'm trying to learn how to use Salesforce. So we got the final step. Let's push those into SF as part into Salesforce. Oops, got a bit trigger happy there. For 05, let's just test the connection using. Now, again, I'm copying these from a file, but originally, and as you just saw me do with OpenAI, it's just a case of grabbing these from the relevant place. Put them into the file you're using. I'm going to close some of these things. Oh, let's have a look through. Look, just to give you a feeling of how much code it's creating in some of these steps here. Right, this is non-trivial, and at no point have I actually looked at any of this code to figure out if it's working or not. What I do find interesting is looking through the code sometimes and going, wow, like I see what it's doing here, right? So this is the prompt that it's giving OpenAI. It's telling it it's going to receive a bunch of numbered list of names. For each name, extract the family names, ignoring these, doing these, etc., etc. So it's pretty cool. Just going to close all these to make it look a bit neater. So it's written some more code. It's put my keys in there. So it's put my keys in the file there. It's done something else. It's done something else. It's done something else. Run this thing. There we go. So now we've tested the connection, and you can see that it's worked. So, okay, great. Let's insert just one of them in 06. If that works, we can modify to do all. One of the reasons for doing this is that quite often these calls to services take time, and if there's a mistake and you've got to delete everything, that gets a bit painful. And where's my, here we go. This is my current Salesforce. I hope it hasn't inserted it already. That'd be a bit embarrassing. Yeah. So at the moment we've got nothing in here, no contacts. Don't know if those of you who use Salesforce frequently, but this isn't particularly well known to me. Do you want to insert this record into Salesforce? It's asking me very technically here. I'm just going to say it's, I don't know. I'm not sure what you guys would do in this case. I'm just going to go yes. And you can see that it gave us an error there. Changing the code. Oh, I see what it's doing. Right, okay. Now, all we want to add to SF is first, last, mobile, email. What I just did there was important. So it was off generating, doing stuff. I didn't need to stop it. Just by typing something new, it interrupts what it was doing. You can see here, command cancelled. So I just, if I need to get something else done and interrupt what it's doing, I just start typing the next thing. Don't bother prompting each time, just do it. Thanks. Another error there, some sort of, what does it say? Input, oh, I missed it. Int64 is not JSON, serializable. It's obviously having a bit of a conniption. Ah, look, it's had another go. It's changed that way. It's done that. Now let's have a look in here. Yeah, there's a little record there. Sorry to the culturally sensitive for using an Irish accent. Now someone here will know how to delete contact. I'm sure there's a way. Delete. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so we've tested that one. And now we'll go, great. Let's apply those learnings in 07. Insert all of the ones we have. And it's inserting them one by one, which probably I would normally stop it and say, let's do batches, but by the time I've done that, it will have finished. So, and I can see some modifications that I would make here in reality, like I didn't ask it to correctly capitalize stuff. That would have been an update we could have done together. There we go. So let's have a look at, is there a search here? Can you guys help me out? Is there a search? Can't see. Contacts. There's got to be a way of searching, right? It's going to be right in front of me. Oh, here we go. Search. Right, okay. So I would say that that is not. So that particular example, I would say that it hasn't split them out particularly well. I think it might have actually grabbed the original name and used that as the name. But let's have a look. Oh, no, fair enough, yeah. So it's separated out Rahman from, now in reality, this one could have been tweaked. But again, I would just ask it questions about, is that right? And it would have said, no, it's not right. And then it will update that for me in the code. So again, you're just testing the inputs and the outputs. So look, I think that's enough to give you a feel for what the art of the possible is. Let's just quickly squiz through how much code is written here. So we've got that, we've got that, we've got that, and we're about 40 minutes in, and that, and that, and that. Not bad for a non-developer. Hit me up in the comments if you want some guidance on how to do this yourself. More than happy to help. I can post another video and that can be useful to others as well. But hopefully you've got a feel for just what the art of the possible is here, right? How little you need to know about the technology. A lot of this stuff's very technical, but if you keep it honest, keep it explaining things to you, show it what you're seeing, ask it how to do things, ask it to keep things simple, then you can get a pretty amazing amount of things done when you consider we've just interacted with 3 separate systems, 3 separate sets of services and got a reasonably close job done. Cheers.